in 2019 annual trade for canned tuna, this is the second slide. I need to go back first. I don't want to. Okay, sorry, there are some technical problems going back to the slides. Okay, right. So we see some positive changes in last year's annual imports for canned tuna, and it suddenly increased significantly during the first quarter of 2020, and there are positive changes also during the first 5 months of 2020. Now, looking at the top market, that is the European Union, we see quite a bit of an increase in January, March. And in most of the markets, and the top markets among the European Union was Spain, Italy, Germany, the Netherlands, the UK, France, Portugal, Belgium, Poland, and Greece, the top 10. And imports increased at almost all markets except in France, and of course Spain, Italy.
Todos los mercados menos el francés aumentó la importación. Y bueno, en España también.
UK, Belgium, Poland, and Greece, they all bought products for direct consumption, either in the retail trade or in the restaurant trade. And we see the same trend in the European Union. It has imports went quite up during January, May, compared to last year. It was about 12%. Same thing is in the USA as well. And the panic buying during the early months of COVID outbreak, that is February, March, there were more sales at the retail, but very, very depressing sales at the catering trade. But nonetheless, the purchases that actually took place during January, March, that supported the panic buying in the retail trade in most of the markets. And it kind of settled down by April. So the panic buying we saw in February to mid-April, it has also kind of settled down, as I said, from April onwards. But nonetheless, imports in April and in May, the cumulative imports in the European Union were 12% higher. In USA was 14% higher. In Japan, 3%. Saudi Arabia, 9%. And Australia also increased. Canada also 18%. Other markets like Russia, New Zealand, and Southeast Asia, also we see increasing trends of canned tuna. Now, looking at the export market, let's look at the export slide in the next one. Yeah, we see positive trends in the export trend as well, and these are the top exporters: Thailand, Ecuador, Spain, the Philippines, Indonesia, and China. And as we look at Thai export trend, Thai exports increased quite substantially, particularly a 41% rise in the United States, its stock market, compared to the same period last year. Thai exports also increased to Japan and to the other markets. And Thai processors tell us that the import demand for canned tuna was high from mid-February to April to replenish the empty shelves that actually the panic buying took place during the early months of pandemic. But it kind of softened down from May onwards. And And the same trend, positive export trend, we also see during January, May. Thailand continued to export more compared to 4% or 4.6% rise in January, May. It went up to 6% sorry, in January, March, it up to 6% in January, May. Ecuador also increased to 6%. Spanish exports went up by 4.6% during January, May. Philippines by 16%, so on and so forth. So we do see positive changes in the canned tuna trade until May. The June import data is not yet available. If I go back to the next slide, and that will be basically for non-canned products. So in the canned tuna sector, what we have seen that most of the traditional markets, like the Western markets, in the Middle East markets, demand remained quite stable and in fact also increased. But in Asia, particularly in Southeast Asia, we really don't see a similar consumption trend like what we saw in the Western market, like in North America or in Europe. Southeast Asia is not really, it has not been like that, because there is still a preference for fresh fish or for frozen fish if it's available, compared to canned tuna. Of course, supermarkets started buying more because they want to replenish whatever they sold during the panic buying period, and they wanted to have basically secure supply for the coming months while there were lockdowns going on in several countries. So other than Japan and little bit rise in Australia, in other Southeast Asian market, we do not see much changes. But interestingly, I just noticed something that I'd like to share with you. You know, in Singapore, which is a tiny marketplace, all on a sudden they had almost 80% rise in tuna imports. That shows that the preference, or rather affluent consumer group who can spend more money, they are going more for canned tuna in this part of the world, because the other consumers, which are lower income group, they go for canned food like canned sardine and canned mackerel, which are much cheaper than canned tuna, but not necessarily for canned tuna.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Everybody hear me?
Can hear you. Yes, we can hear you.
Or COVID period where we are on webinar, at least we are in touch with each other. So we have a couple of questions in front of me, which I'll try to reply during the conversation, as well as to answer some questions as it come in. Okay, so there we are, webinar PowerPoint. So I'll take you through basically the Middle East business shared with Fatima, and as she's from research, I would give more credibility to her. I have just taken the main supplying countries and done a quick at the in 2019 was something on this line for us, just to give you how important they are. I have, for people being from the commercial side, I've just not showed the tonnages, but I've also showed the containers that come in. So it's Saudi Arabia, this is the 19 approximately business coming in from Egypt, from Thailand and Indonesia. These are the two main suppliers coming into Saudi Arabia. Then you have United Arab Emirates, where there's quite a bit amount of cross-trading happening from UAE to other countries in Africa or to Iran, mostly from Thailand business. A bit from Philippines come in for the local population. And then there is business suppliers of Indonesia, of course, as Qatar. Those are the containers they approximately buy. The next big one is Egypt. Substantial shredded market with the price increase, their exchange rate and the economic situation. That's what it has become. Libya, which is traditionally a big market, has started coming in. with the oil prices going up. But as we'll go through, I'll give you some insights on how that market is. Iraq, and then there is Jordan. Jordan is mainly for its own consumption and a lot of business. Can you send the presentation? Yeah, I can give you an idea about that. And then Jordan has its shipments going for their own consumption as well as this trade into Iraq. To look at Jan to May, comparing how the countries have done. So what I analyzed and came out that this has been a bit of a difference from what Fatima had shared with us. I will just check and come back to you guys on Saudi Arabia as a market. For me, the business had gone down a little bit during this COVID period over there. Then there's been a significant drop in most of the markets, the big one being Libya. And Libya, more than COVID, the challenge was basically the exchange rate. The petrol prices fell down. There was not much of money in that market, and shipments got delayed. And then there is UAE, the market grew, and that is because of COVID. Canned tuna, as we have all seen, has been a perfect business to have put it in your pantry, and there was panic buying on canned tuna that. And I would like to recommend people just to be careful about a bullwhip effect that might take place, because as for UAE, I know, and in Saudi, most of the inventories which was there in the country has been offloaded. So now there is demands coming in. The situation that's happened in Libya was the sharp downturn of 47% that I showed was basically because of the exchange rate. So in Libya, there's a good thing that happens is that tuna is basically essential product, and therefore the government allows letter of credit from banks at an official exchange rate, which is significantly lower than the black market exchange rate, which you would definitely have to use for buying most of the products in Libya, if it's chocolates or if it's computers or anything else. So whenever the market prices jumped up now, because of oil prices going down, the people went back to this LC form of payment. There was a huge delay in shipments, getting the LCs in, contracts made. I'm sure with a couple of my supplier friends would say has been very upset with delays that's happening there. Egypt, the second big market, has seen a growth in this market. Egyptians are very smart. They have understood how the trend of tuna happens. So coming to November, December, post Anuga or Sial, they usually do the contract. So fast, a lot of business coming in. Again, tuna being a shelf-stable product has had a good demand for the COVID pandemic picking up, but it was mainly shredded, which people wanted.
Principalmente el conversado. La gente está un poquito preocupada con el tema laboral, cómo vamos a sobrevivir con los fondos limitados que vamos teniendo.
Which would have reflected on the Egyptian. If you see, the growth of business was about 25% in this first quarter as compared to quarter, but the dollar price jump was much significantly lower. And then we take another two market of Saudi Arabia and UAE, as we see that this is part of the bigger businesses. Saudi Arabia and Egypt comes in Fatima's top 10 tuna trade business. There has been certain movement in Saudi Arabia during this COVID period. Tuna has started getting a good demand and appreciation. You know, people are becoming more health conscious. So there has been a demand on that. The people are very are given up quite a bit of meat eating structure has moved to this thing. Then also the eating habit of tuna has changed. It was generally a solid light meat tuna business, and that has moved basically towards a white meat business. So people are going up and also the solid has gone down to the chunk. So there has been a movement in the segmentation of the market, and that's a very interesting thing to watch out. There was a question I saw somebody well aware of the Saudi Arabian business about taxation that's happening. So basically with the oil price down and changes happening, Saudi Arabia, which was basically a petro economy, did not have any taxation. A couple of years back, they got a 5% VAT. And from 1st of July, that has become a 15% VAT that has come in. Things are changing in Saudi Arabia. I was just looking at an article which said that it was a money transaction, cash business economy, which is moving to card. A lot of card business have started coming in, but we still need to see what is the impact of this 15% VAT coming in, because till June, people were aware that there's going to be a VAT. So there was a lot of demand, a lot of storage happening. We need to see in July, August. Again, August was Eid, so there would have been some movement happening, but let's see how it works out. The other big scary part was that the custom duty in Saudi Arabia could be changed, because many products which Saudi has got some demand or some production went up from 5 to 7%, 7 to 14%. So there were a big jumps of custom trade, but for tuna, they have still kept it at 5%. So that's what happened in Saudi Arabia. UAE, of course, yes, the stocks in the market was eliminated. So it was a good time to destock the market. The COVID pandemic, shelves were getting empty, both all in the Middle East market. As I had mentioned before, let's be aware of the fact that trends have started coming in. The fact that remains that, tuna in most of the production companies were essential items and they were not covered in pandemic, helped the supply chain. So there was a question on from the attendees about the supply chain of tuna, and I would say that definitely in Thailand or in other, supply chain was not majorly affected, maybe a little bit here and there on the shipping and the clearance part of it, because it was basically put in the essential food category that it came in. Another important thing in Middle East to be remembered now is that because of these changes that's happening in the oil price, in the structure of economy, a lot of the economies have a big expatriate population. So in UAE, about 10% is local, 90% of the population, or maybe 85% of the population are expatriate people. And we already can see a movement expectation about now 10 to 14. I was having a discussion yesterday with somebody and they were saying they're expecting 10 to 14% of the population moving out. Kuwait has made some new rules and regulation limiting members coming in. So there will be a change in this population and the demand movement. So yeah, we need to be aware of that. So that's basically the quick small presentation to start off with. Let me see if there were other questions on Q&A I should do. Species of tuna, somebody wanted to know. Most of the Middle East market has been it's a skipjack market generally, except for Kuwait and Lebanon, which is a white meat tuna market. Demand of canned tuna is not normal due to food. Okay, that's for Fatima. So I think so. That's where I would stop sharing my presentation, and then we will have, I think, so panel questions in a few minutes' time. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Arnab. Interesting to see figures showing decline in imports of canned tuna in most countries in the Middle East during the first few months of the year. Also, here you had enlightened us situations in your key markets, which is really interesting. Moving on to the EU tuna markets, Mr. Wan, the floor is yours.